Beside him stood a shadow in woman's form, long and tall and terrible, her hands alive with pale white fire. So that's Euron, the Forsaken, we know that. And that messes Euron, we know that. This is the White Hands Fire Lady. But who is it in the books? Let's find out.
Oh, you did say when I brought up Cersei to hang on to that for a second. Was there something you wanted to allude to with
Oh,
Cersei?
I don't really even want to talk about Cersei. If you want to, you can. But I mean,
No, just that she was the other candidate for Hands of White Fire Lady because of the wildfire symbolism. But to be honest, I don't know if there's anything that Euron could gain by taking Cersei right now, considering how unpopular she is. Does she even as a means of political gain? I'm not sure if it's really if she's even good as a stepping stone for him anymore.
I don't think there's any Euron Cersei intersection at all coming. I think they got nothing to do with each other. That's my opinion. That's only on the show, and it was really dumb. It didn't make any sense. It didn't seem like, oh, that came from Martin. It's just a little different. It just was dumb. So don't see it. Don't see the motivations for either character. Euron is busy with magical women and stuff, and they just don't see it. Oh, and Cersei's wildfire symbolism is not in her hands, and it's never white fire, and it's not a sorceress thing. It's about her using wildfire to blow shit up, in my opinion. So
I personally think it's Cersei. Now, hear me out, because I saw a David Lightbringer video, and I mean no disrespect by name dropping him or using a clip of him later. I think it's fun to debate these things. You know, the book isn't out. Who knows when it will come out? I'm enjoying joining the community and having debates. This is my first A Song of Ice and Fire theory video, but I hope I can make a compelling case as to why I do think Cersei and Euron will team up in the Winds of Winter. I think Cersei is the White Hands Fire Lady from the Forsaken chapter, and I see the connection there. I have 3 reasons why I think Cersei will, in fact, team up with Euron in the books. Not unlike how she did in the show, but it's not just because it happened in the show. Okay, there are 3 reasons, and I'll list the 3 reasons, and then I'll break them down to further explain exactly why I think, like, what I mean. Reason number 1, thematically, I think it makes a lot of sense. David Lightbringer agrees that, and many other people agree that Cersei has a wildfire sort of symbolism. You feel me? If you read the books, Cersei, there's a chapter where there's a fire and she's like staring into it, almost like, entranced by the fire's flames. I think her exact quote or the exact line is, "No, I want to stay and watch the fire a while longer." I think that's what Cersei says in one of her, I believe, A Feast for Crows chapters. I forget the context. But if you read the books, she does have a lot of fiery symbolism. Of course, in the show, she infamously blew up the Sept of Baelor, and I do think that, as insane as that was, something similar is teased to happen in the books. Just like in the show, Cersei is on trial for basically the same crimes as in the show. So she's on trial. The trial will be at the Sept of Baelor. A lot of her enemies, including Marjorie and the Tyrells, a lot of people will be in that place, just like in the show. And I do think that there's reason to believe Cersei will blow up the Sept. Because if you don't believe Cersei will blow up the Sept, then the rest of my kind of theory crafting maybe isn't as strong. But just hear me out. If you're against the idea of Cersei blowing up the Sept, if I can't change your mind, I do have other reasons why I think Cersei and Euron will team up. And I think her blowing up the Sept is one of the biggest reasons why she will team up with Euron. Okay, so hear me out. Cersei was there when her younger brother used wildfire to completely destroy an enemy army. She's very knowledgeable of the power of wildfire, and she knows all about the wildfire catches throughout King's Landing and the Red Keep, etc. She knows about this stuff, and she's seen firsthand how effective it can be to get rid of your enemies. On top of that, she has Mad Queen vibes. She's, especially in the show towards the end, she's very much like giving and I know maybe some people are like, you shouldn't bring up the show. Look, George Martin's name is all over that show for a reason. Yes, he didn't have final say on anything, but he had to have given them notes. And I do think that Cersei and Euron was one of those notes. I think he probably just told them that Cersei and Euron will team up, and then the showrunners decided to make it all about putting your finger in bums, etc. But I think that there is a bit more to it than that. Okay, so Cersei knows all about wildfire and how powerful it is. She mentions it a bunch in her chapters. She has wildfire symbolism. There are probably better videos out there that can break that down specifically. So that's, part 1. We're forming the layers here. Okay, the next thing is that, maybe she'll do her trial by combat. Maybe the Mountain will fight someone. Maybe it will be Loras Tyrell. That's my best guess. If the Mountain does fight someone in the trial of combat, then the religious people will probably choose Loras to be their champion. Maybe Loras even wins and beats the Mountain. My theory is that if that happens, Cersei, from her Red Keep balcony, because she doesn't need to attend a trial if it's a trial by combat, she can't just send her champion. Regardless of the guilty or innocent, they'll send people to arrest her if the Mountain loses. If the Mountain wins, then she's innocent. She doesn't need to blow up the Sept. But if Loras triumphantly wins and beats the Mountain, knocks his head off, reveals that the Mountain, or rather Sir Robert Strong is actually the Mountain, knocks his head off, big reveal, and Cersei maybe gets a signal from someone to say that the trial is lost, so she sends the signal all the way from the Red Keep to blow up the Sept. Not unlike how Tyrion, from a far distance, he set a signal to blow up, all the ships in the Blackwater that were coming for Stannis' army. It's the same thing. Cersei will repeat that. She'll send a signal for the Sept to be blown up, and she will suffer consequences for it. Unlike in the show where she just became queen and no one cared. I imagine there being lots of riots. I imagine there being people going full French Revolution, trying to overthrow her and get rid of her. So she won't be lasting that much longer after she does this. It's essentially blowing up the Westerosi version of the Vatican. But think about this. Cersei, one of her charges on her trial is, I believe it's called deicide. That is the crime of killing a god. Who else do we know that wants to kill gods and is in the business of killing gods? Euron, Crowseye, Greyjoy. He's all about killing gods. The Forsaken chapter teases that the book version of Euron is in the interest of becoming a god himself. There is an epic vision that is foreshadowing for the kind of things he'll be up to in the Forsaken chapter, where he is seen on the Iron Throne looking like a Cthulhu-like godman, and he has all the 7 gods of the 7 religion impaled on different swords from the Iron Throne. He is coming for the 7. He's going to kill the 7 gods. He's going to kill all the other gods, or at least the 7. There are other gods there that he killed as well. I probably shouldn't be saying that word as much on a YouTube video, but I'm getting passionate. I don't care. I don't get paid anyway. So, Euron is in the business of killing the 7. Who else killed the 7? Like, Cersei literally blew up the 7 statues, the Sept of Baelor. Like, she literally is on trial for the same crime as Euron. They're both being charged by the gods for killing the gods. Cersei is a very ungodly woman in the same way Euron is. For Cersei to have blown up the Vatican, essentially, she had to have, she obviously isn't very religious or doesn't believe that the gods are going to punish her. I kind of like the idea that in the books, maybe Cersei's haunted by the gods, and she starts to worry that actually they're real and they're going to come for her, and maybe she shouldn't have blown up the biggest church ever. But Euron can come to her aid, no, Cersei, I actually think it's really hot that you blew up the church. I love blowing up churches. I love killing holy men, and you've unalived almost as many holy men as I have, Cersei. That's a Euron type beat. They do have a connection because of the Sept situation, because of everything with the Sparrows and Cersei. Cersei's whole storyline right now is tied up in religion, and so is Euron's. So there is a connection there. Yes, Cersei isn't very magical, but her storyline is very religious, and so is Euron's. Yes, his storyline is magical. David Lightbringer argues that Cersei and Euron's storylines are completely separate, and that Euron's on a magical type beat and Cersei is not. But I'd argue they're both on a maybe a fiery type beat, but more importantly, they're both on a religious type beat. Euron is all about killing the gods. Blowing up the Sept of Baelor is absolutely something Euron would probably do. Killing the High Septon is absolutely something Euron would do. Killing all the Scepters and Septons, that is Euron's, that's his type. He'll look at Cersei and see Cersei's just ended all these Scepters and all these Septons, and he'll be like, that's what I need. So thematically, I think there is a reason. It makes sense. He doesn't, I don't know if Euron hates religion, but he wants to become a god. He kills gods and he destroys churches. I imagine in Old Town, I actually think Euron will actually take over Old Town, whether they wave the white flag and he just raids them anyway. I can see him destroying the Starry Sept. He's that type of guy. What? Euron is, he has 2 goals, and that's what people need to remember. He has 2 goals in the Forsaken chapter that we're privy to. Goal number 1 is to become a god, and we're all in agreement that he's probably going to do some crazy naval blood sacrifice to try and become a god. Cool. We can all maybe agree on that. Battle of blood, etc. But the other thing that people seem to constantly be ignoring about whether or not, about what Euron's plans are, is that in the Forsaken chapter, in the vision, he is on the Iron Throne. We cannot ignore that he clearly has a desire to be on the Iron Throne. Maybe it's Iron Throne first, become god later, or the other way around, or both. But he wants to be on the Iron Throne. I don't feel like a lot of theories ignore that is something Euron wants to do. Maybe he'll be king of Old Town. He's already king of the Iron Islands. But I think it makes sense for him to team up with Cersei, because she is already on the Iron Throne for all intents and purposes, Queen Regent, whatever. Even if Tommen's gone, she's the one in the chair. Just like in the show, it might be difficult to get her out that chair. So Euron could be her last friend. Cersei has no friends. She is desperate. She has all the reason in the world to want to team up with Euron and use his Iron Fleet. So it makes a lot of sense, I feel, that Cersei would be happy to maybe agree to marry Euron, because in doing so, I mean, again, Euron doesn't, you might argue, Euron doesn't need Cersei though. Yes, we all understand Cersei needs any friend she can get. Cersei needs Euron, and she probably would marry Euron if it meant that Euron would use his forces to, maintain the throne. Euron's super scary. If he's like, look, I'm king now, Cersei's my queen, then Cersei gets to stay being queen. Who's going to touch them? That being said, what's in it for Euron? In the show, it was, well, I just like, I'm just into Cersei, so, it's just, I guess, pure physical attraction, or just the ego of being able to say that I banged the queen, I guess, is in the show. That's all Euron cares about. Maybe that's part of it in the books, but I think that there'll be more to it than that. I think Cersei, I don't think he'll actually marry Cersei. Maybe they allude to the idea that they'll get married. But I think teaming up with Cersei just means that Euron doesn't have to invade King's Landing. He'll get to just walk into King's Landing, walk into the throne room, claim that he's teaming up with Cersei. Maybe she'll even announce that they're going to get married and that, she has an army now, or a navy force, or whatever godman Euron is, so no one can touch Cersei. It's really in her benefit. For him, it could just be an avenue for him to get himself in the door. Once he's seen with Cersei on the Iron Throne, and once he's safely in King's Landing, he could betray Cersei easily and then just take the throne for himself. The same way Cersei kind of just seized power because there was a power vacuum at the end of the show, so she just became queen. Euron can just dispose of Cersei real quick as soon as he gets in. She has no choice but to kind of rely on someone like Euron. Maybe Euron actually is open to having Cersei be his queen, and he's again just kind of into it because she likes, or doesn't like, but she's kind of into blowing up churches like him. So maybe he actually tolerates her until Cersei annoys him and upsets her last friend in the world, and then he gives her the Thalia flowers treatment. Think about it. He's a king. Cersei is a queen of sorts. If he gets her pregnant, maybe uses magic to accelerate the process, gets her belly big, he can slap her on the prow of his ship the way he did Thalia flowers, and then, I don't know, do more blood sacrifice. Okay, so that was reason number one. I'm cooking. I have even bigger reasons as to why I think there's a connection between Euron and Cersei. So thematically, that's my explanation as to why I do think their themes connect. Yes, Cersei's not magical, but her storyline is all about religion, and so is Euron's. So there is a connection there. Cersei has probably the only other person who's blown up as many or ended the lives of as many holy men as Euron. Like, there are connections there when you think about that aspect of the story. Again, this assumes that Cersei does blow up the Sept, but even if she doesn't blow up the Sept, she's still charged of deicide. That is just a fact in the books. Like, she is charged and guilty of the same crime that Euron's into. Euron is absolutely the type to marry a woman queen who's accused of deicide. That's Euron's type. He's probably accused of deicide. He definitely is. He's probably killed a bunch of high priests. So I think it's very fitting, actually, for Euron and Cersei to team up. And yeah, she needs him more than he needs her, and that could be part of it. He probably will abuse Cersei, and just because he knows he doesn't really need her, and that can be part of her storyline moving forward. The second reason I think that Euron and Cersei will team up in the books is kind of less of a reason, but it is convenience narratively. I've recently done a fan fiction where I actually detail all these events in a 100,000 word fan fiction on AO3. Shout out at Jay Bronny. That being said, it's convenient to put Euron and Cersei together. Not that George needs to, but there are so many storylines in the books right now. If he's trying to wrap things up, not rush it, but like make progress, then tying up Euron's storyline and Cersei's storyline, it is a way to keep the ball rolling. It gives Cersei more things to do once her trial is over. It gives her a way to remain in power maybe a little bit longer. It means that Euron, has a direct avenue to the Iron Throne after he's done at Old Town, and putting them together just adds more depth to both their storylines. We will get to see Euron from Cersei's perspective, as she's a POV character, and if she's dating Euron, I mean, I don't know. In my fanfiction, we get to see what it might be like to date Euron, as in book Euron, and I did those chapters. I think George could do the same thing, but a million times better. So I'd love to see something like that. And also, this is a Cersei who's going insane. In my fanfiction, Euron is filling her wine, because she's like an alcoholic at this point in both the books and the show. He's filling it with Shade of the Evening. So she's like really delusional right now, But he's convincing her that she can be a god just like he can. And it's all a setup. That's in my fanfiction. But these are the kind of things that I think could happen in the official books. So My third and final reason, other than like it just kind of being convenient, as to why I think it could happen in the books, it is because it did happen on the show. I, unlike David, do think that this could have been a note that George gave the showrunners, that Cersei and Euron have this connection, they will team up, maybe they won't bang, maybe they won't hook up, maybe they won't get married, maybe they won't be a couple. I do think that's more interesting if they do those things, but maybe they won't. But at the very least, I think they will team up, and I think it'd be epic for there to be a Battle of Blood 2 of sorts, a second Battle of Blood at King's Landing in the in the Blackwater Bay. Have Euron do some crazy magic stuff there, just like in Old Town. That's what happens in my fan fiction. Anyway, that's my theories. If you want to know more on how I think it could go down, then, you know, link in the description. You can read my full 100k words on it. But that being said, yeah, those are basically... Oh, I have one more massive reason. I saved the best reason till last. Oh my gosh. So this... I don't know if this is a original to me in terms of theories, but this is my final piece on why I think Euron and Cersei will team up in the books, not unlike in the show. It'll be different to the show, don't get me wrong. Their dynamic will be different, but the idea, I think that George gave the showrunners a note. He said, Euron and Cersei will team up, possibly they will bang. And they just took that and ran with it, and they didn't follow any of the other notes that George gave them with the, like, how it would happen or why it would make sense. They just did their own thing. My final piece of evidence is Cersei's prophecy. In the show, it's not a big deal, but in the books, it's a big deal that Cersei's paranoid that the quote-unquote Valonqar is going to come and end her life one day. Right? The Valonqar is a Valyrian word for little brother. And Cersei assumes it's obviously Tyrion. That's the little brother that she hates. There's a lot of beef there. And it makes a lot of sense that Tyrion also hates Cersei. So he might be the one to, quote unquote, choke the life out of her, is what the Valonqar is prophesied to do. So Cersei's super like paranoid one day that Tyrion's going to like choke her out. But there are hints that maybe Jaime is the one who ends up doing it, because he's also her little brother, and at this point in the books, he also hates her, you know. Now in the show, obviously, they ruined Jaime at the very last minute. I like to pretend maybe he did choke her out, but, you know, it is what it is. That being said, in the books, what I think will happen is I don't think Tyrion will be the Valonqar. Too predictable, too obvious. I don't think he'll be the one to end Cersei. He wants to, but I don't think he will. He might even have a redemption arc, separate video. Jaime, I don't think he's going to be the one to end Cersei. It makes a lot of sense. It would be cool. It would be perfectly fine. I'm not going to be angry if it happens. It makes a lot of sense. And that could be what happens. It could be that's the note that George gave the showrunners, and instead they made Jaime kiss her instead of end her. I think what would be even more interesting is if Euron, someone who is obsessed with old Valyria, someone who has a full Valyrian suit, which is like the only one in the... He has a Valyrian steel armor suit. It's like the only one in the world. He wants a dragon like the old Valyrians. He probably can speak a bit of Valyrian. He's been to old Valyria. He has Valyrian like objects and items like the Dragonbinder horn and other stuff. Like, he loves Valyria. He has Valyrian swords. He has Valyrian swords. His hobby, Euron, is cosplaying as a Valyrian. He loves Valyria. And also he has nicknames. His name is Euron Greyjoy, but he's nicknamed the Crow's Eye. He's possibly nicknamed, Euron Nightwalker. He has different nicknames. And, you know, he is like a king as well. You know who else has a bunch of nicknames? Daenerys, Mother of Chains, Mother of Dragons, Breaker of Chains, Mother of Dragons, the Khaleesi, whatever. Euron could have a bunch of nicknames by this point. He'll be kind of a legend by this point in the story. What if it's one of his names? Because, you know, Euron Nightwalker, that's a whole separate theory, but there's an idea that one of Euron's nicknames translates into, I think it's Evil Brother or Bad Brother. What if he goes by a new nickname? Little Brother. The little brother that ended his older brother, killed King Balon and took his throne. He's killed other brothers, and he was the little brother who became king. What if Euron earns the Valyrian nickname to celebrate him being the little brother in the Greyjoys who made it to godhood, and people call him the Valonqar, and he tells Cersei that one day, like, Cersei, they started calling me the Valonqar, they love me, and she's like, what? And he's like, yeah, by the way, I need another sacrifice. And he starts choking out Cersei, and then she gets killed by the Valonqar. Cersei's so self-centered, of course she assumes the Valonqar is her little brother, but the direct quote is, you're going to be choked out by the little brother, the Valonqar. So it could be anyone's little brother. It could be Euron Greyjoy. And that makes a lot of sense, I think. He's very Valyrian. It's a cool nickname. So that's my theory. I don't know if that's an original, but Euron is the Valonqar. That's probably not an original. I'm sure someone else has said that. I'm new to the community. I only read the books like a couple times recently. So that's my theory. Let me know what you think. I meant no disrespect to David or anyone else. I just want to debate. I just want to talk. And I'm curious to know if you disagree or if you agree. If I've made stupid points, let me know. It's a terrible theory. If you think it has any merit or if you are curious to see more, fanfic in the description. Peace out.